Really nice to meet you, by the way, Mike. I
Nice
remember seeing that first video clip. It's very visually stimulating.
A little bit more dangerous in the female world right now, where these women who she was born a size 0 and then just got injections in her ass, and now she's going to go around telling people how to train.
Hello.
We were talking off camera there. We were talking carnivore. We were talking. You and I are going to start a basketball league, and we're going to follow Kobe Bryant's 2001 championship off-season training program. So what else do we have out there that we're talking about?
I mean, that really reminded me, like all of the whole entire basketball program and like doing the extremes. It reminded me of like something that I learned. It was drilled into me because I'm a clinical kinesiology major, oh my God, graduate. I just graduated. I'm sorry. I'm still used to calling myself a major. So there was this one teacher who kept on drilling it into us that if you tell somebody to do the extremes, it can be dangerous. And a big reason for that was like cardiovascular events. A lot of people with high blood pressure, if you tell them to exercise, then that exercise will drive their blood pressure up so much that they could give themselves a heart attack. So you don't want to like tell people go right into it, like just move more and eat less. And like, even though that's really great general advice, when you speak to somebody with like morbid obesity or somebody who might have a condition, you have to be nuanced and you have to give more nuanced advice. Otherwise they could really hurt themselves. And I think it's a big reason why like social media, like the social media, like general coaching, like copy paste plans are so dangerous in my personal opinion, because you don't know the person well enough to give them something that actually will not only work for them, but be safe for them. So that was something that really came up. Like, I just kept on remembering that because it was something that really stuck with me, like thinking, oh yeah, too much exercise is also not good. Just like anything else, like too much of anything is bad.
Sure.
And I think that's an excellent point. And I have always worried about it a little less with training than as opposed to diet, where diet can get so nuanced and also be so what is not only effective but could make patient A thrive with diet, can make patient B drive him or herself closer to the grave. Training, not so much, but the aspect of training that I've always been so guarded about, especially now that I've just recently got into more formally, because up to this point, the only training I would do for people would be in person or one-on-one client type stuff through Patreon and things like that, which I like, but it affords me that ability to like do questionnaires, talk to them, do Zoom calls, do phone calls, and be like, oh wait, you're 21 and you're 5'3" and 180, and you've been competing in powerlifting for 4 years. Oh, okay. Yeah. Back squats are great for you, dude. Let's go. Deadlift all day if you want to. Oh, I'm sorry. You're a 40-year-old single mother who's never lifted weights. I'm not going to be like, yeah, go ahead, get those back squats going. Just throw on the plates, because sure, I squat, I deadlift. I love them. They're useful exercises, but there's an understanding that needs to come with like, well, how much overall benefit is there for the largest swath of people? And I just created a program for trained heroics. It's my first time doing the, like, as you pointed out, like that more cut and paste kind of shotgun effect of like, well, try this and it should be good. And I had to really work hard to think like things like Bulgarian split squats. I can't really think of a population where that sucks or that could be potentially dangerous. I can't think of a population where if you can do a chin up, and if you can't do a chin up, an assisted chin up, it's going to be pretty beneficial for everybody if you can put the time and the effort into doing a chin up, as opposed to bent over rows. If you don't really know what you're doing, you're going to end up in the hospital because your lumbar is all jacked, like, yeah. So there's those nuances that become very difficult. And it bothers me a lot with this new world of kind of cut and paste type stuff, because if we're looking at it in a vacuum, yeah, deadlifts are awesome. Is deadlifts awesome if people haven't spent the hours and hours, if not months and months and months, of getting every single detail of every single part of that movement down? No, it can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And even like if I look at like Bulgarian split squats or chin-ups, I can think of a few of my own clients that I think I wouldn't program that for. So for example, there was this one kid who he was so hell-bent on telling me that his shoulder was okay. Literally about a week after he stopped working with me, he tore his entire labrum off.
Oh.
So he spent the entire time working with me, and I kept on saying, don't do this exercise, you're going to get hurt. Don't do this, you're going to get hurt. Like, be careful. Like, you're telling me that your joint literally hurts at the ball where it is attached by this little mini tendon. So like your humerus, it fits inside of the shoulder joint like this. And there's this one singular tendon that attaches in the very middle. And he kept telling me that it was hurting deep inside of his shoulder. And I'm like, don't do the shoulder press. Don't do the pull-ups. I know that it sucks, but like, don't do it. You're going to get yourself hurt. He decided to quit working with me because I kept on telling him to like chill the hell out with his exercise program. And he tore his shoulder like completely off.
Good times.
And I'm just like, dude, like you have to be like, getting to know the client is so important. And it's so lost in like in the copy paste. Like I keep on seeing it with some of like, especially I noticed this has been a pattern, and I'm not sure if you noticed too, but the influencers who Photoshop, they always do the copy paste. Always.
Yeah. No, well,
what's the guy that exposes those? What's his name again? He gets a lot.
Joey Swole? Oh no, Goob. The Goob?
Yeah. I don't remember his name exactly. I met
that dude. He's actually like a really cool guy. And my friend Josh, who runs the Austin fitness community, Josh Job, he's really good friends with him. And I have a built-in problem with people who make content based on other people's content. Okay, I always made a point. I'm not going to be that guy that's just going to like pick apart other people's shit. But guys like Goob, guys like Joey Swole, I go like that I support, because you're essentially you're playing law enforcement. You're essentially protecting the public from predatory people, which is a different thing. It's more of the I'm going to make my entire podcast dissecting Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm always like, what the fuck's wrong with you, dude? Come on, grow up. It's more, but these like, and I hate to say it, like, I actually think there's something more precarious and a little bit more dangerous in the female world right now, where these women who she was born a size 0 and then just got injections in her ass, and now she's going to go around telling people how to train. I was like, I'm watching you arch your back so deeply and get such massive levels of butt wink while you're squatting, and you're going to tell other women who don't know how to squat. Like, this is bananas. You know, like 19-year-old girl who was born with insane genetics, you're going to tell people how to work out and how to diet. This is ridiculous. You know,
it's definitely blown up, because like, you know, when I was coming out of school, you know, it was to work at certain places, we had to have specific recognized credentials, and there was a lot of like online certifications you can get to be a trainer. Unfortunately, it's not regulated. I didn't know that. I was young, and it would drive me nuts. But back then, it was like the big guy or the really fit girl in the gym was the trainer. Now, to your point, it's all over social media. Like, we have a coaching. I'm gonna try to look it up. But anyways, just obliterating people. I mean, 2.5 hour long sessions, you know, squat, bench. He's doing burpees in between squats, like just pound. He's like, you're fat, you need to get better, blah, blah. I'm an IFBB pro. Like, this is why you do it. There's a bunch of guys and girls that later on came pro out of that gym, but he was one of them. And it was definitely egregious watching the guy train. It was like your stomach would turn. Like, I can't believe this poor, out of shape, middle-aged dude just trying to get in shape, first time working out, and that's what he's experiencing. But now it's a million on social media, right?
Well, I don't, unless someone's genuinely evil, I don't like to name names and stuff on the microphone. But I will. I got asked when they brought back Biggest Loser. My agent calls me. He's like, "Hey, would you be interested? You're in good shape. Would you be interested in doing that?" And I was like, "No, not really." And so he goes, "Dude, this is a fish in a barrel right here, and they'll pay you to do." I go, "I understand, but I have a real problem with this." He goes, "Explain to me." And I said, "I used to watch that show occasionally, or at least watch clips." and I'd see literally 400-pound people who are now doing extreme diets and box jumps. And I go, what the fuck is like, this is insane. You know, like, I can't be a part of that, because I'm going to be the guy who's going to be like, look, let's just go for a walk today and let's have some discussion about diet and nutrition. And let's just take it easy. Let's maybe analyze how many calories you're eating, and let's drop it by 300 tomorrow. And then we're going to go. We're going to see how good. That doesn't make very good TV. You know, like that.
Yeah. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but it's just that I've had my fair share of like 400 plus pound clients when I was back working in a gym. And every single client I had, it was, hey, maybe you should like, do you want me to give you this like recipe for like a really high volume salad, or like some really low calorie, high protein ice cream thing? Like, here, let me give you like a cool recipe. Just do some like 15-minute cardio today. Like, you don't push them that hard. That's not what they're already carrying around 400 pounds. Imagine deadlifting 400 pounds to work and back.
Yep. And also,
actually,
like, the analysis of it like has to be a little bit more comprehensive.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is, like, as a drug addict and alcoholic, I look at it from that perspective. Okay. Every single person on earth, unless you're cuckoo, every one of us has had that point where we're like, you know, I'm 25 pounds over. I'm 15 pounds overweight. You know, bigger guys like Joe, you might be like, I got about 30 I could lose before the summer. Well, let's go. Let's pull it together. And then you pull yourself back together and you kind of take better care of you, lose the weight, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Everyone does that. Okay. There's not a human being alive, unless you're getting a paycheck for it, that is just uniformly dialed in. When you get to the point where you are 100 pounds overweight and you still are eating and you still are not actually, now you're 200 pounds overweight. And these people, we're not talking about nutritional problem. We're not talking about dieting. We're talking about serious psychological issues that have to be dealt with that level of delicacy and with that type of intent. And you got to go from the inside out. And then to treat that person like me in March going, I got to get ready for summer, is fucking insane. It's fucking utterly insane. If someone were to take me and treat me at 19, 20 years old, like the guy in college who's like, this is 3 nights in a row where I've maybe tied one on a little hard. I got to pull it together and start studying a little more. I was someone who woke up and drank a bottle of whiskey in the shower, getting ready to go to start the day. You can't treat me like the guy who's like, I've been partying a little too hard, I got to pull it together. And the same thing goes with people. You can't treat the person who's like 425 pounds with the same type of approach that you handle the person who's like wants to get bikini ready. It's a totally different psychological, spiritual endeavor, you know?
Yeah. I did find it, but I won't pull it up to put the person on blast. And I had the wrong name, but anyways, I did find the person I was thinking of. So I'll send it to you offline. But
as long as you pointed out that it wasn't Stan Efferding, because I like Stan.
No. That's what I was saying. I thought the guy's name was Stan, but it wasn't Stan. And that's what I was saying, is clarifying it's not Stan Efferding. Yeah. No, we talked about him earlier, actually. And you know, just some of the things he did from an integrity standpoint that I thought was good. So nope, nothing related to Mr. Efferding at all. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's definitely the Wild West, and that's kind of where I came across your content. You know, just kind of clarifying things or shining a light in areas of things that are maybe misconceptions. I don't know. There was one on there. I won't pull it up right now, but it was regarding like the food you eat that men can't eat because there's estrogen in it or something. And
yeah,
there's another shred that you did there. I'll email you after to get permission from you on which ones you want me to pull or show. But is it? I don't.
Whatever. Like,
what's that?
Feel free to pull up whatever. The only
Okay.
one video that I'm actually going to be making a video stitching myself on, because it was a misconception of mine. It was about like telomere length and how that actually does not correlate with longevity. It was just a correlation. It's not causative whatsoever. And I wanted to clarify a few things that I said in that video. So that's the only video that it was about telomere length and longevity, but like, yeah, just just because I already took it down. So it's
fair enough.
That's the only video that I would not be comfortable with like having like re-brought up, just because it's wrong and I want to correct it. But
I'd love to run one that's been cooking me inside. And then I always try my best. Am I successful all the time? I don't know, but I always try my best to, Joe, the best thing I can compare it to is jujitsu. I'm pretty good. I've been training a long time. I'm a purple belt, and I've exclusively trained with like really well recognized academies. Okay, so I know stuff, but I also I'm good enough to know how much I don't know.
Oh, right.
Okay, so with fitness and nutrition, I know stuff compared to the average person, but I also have spent so much time sitting next to Dr. Drew and actual physicians and actual physiologists, actual nutritional scientists and things like that to know. I know exactly how much I don't know. Okay.
Sure.
But this is one where I get enough of insight into it where I start to get curious. And I love having both of you here to run this by one. My big one right now is seed oils, where I'm very confused on it because I go, okay, if someone cuts out seed oils completely, it gets them to stop eating most crackers, cookies, cake, processed snack foods. So I go, probably a good thing overall. But isn't it the fact that they're not eating cookies, crackers, cakes, as opposed to cutting out things like sesame seed oil or things that I don't necessarily see any compelling evidence to show that they're in and of themselves actually bad for you?
Yeah. That's one of the topics that I literally have like my little brain library of studies in the back of my head for. So especially being in a cardiology lab, I do a lot of like more deep dives into like the healthy fats and like what is actually heart healthy and like what can help improve your health. That being said, so seed oils are a type of unsaturated fat, as I'm sure you know. And the difference between like saturated versus unsaturated fat is kind of like comparing like a brick wall with cement versus a stone wall with no cement in between. Seed oils are more like that stone wall where it's easy to push over. And that's why seed oils and a lot of unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature. When compared to saturated fats, they're solid at room temperature. Another difference between the two types of fat is that most unsaturated fats like linoleic acid or other unsaturated fatty acids like omega-3s and omega-6s, they are not synthesized by your own body, so you need to consume them. In contrast, saturated fats are basically made by every cell in your body. They're not needed. They're not necessary. That being said, when we compare saturated fats to unsaturated fats in isocaloric, so same calorie diets, we've noticed that there is increased liver fat in the group consuming saturated fats, or the group that like switches from saturated fat to unsaturated fat. They have reduced liver fat. And I can send over that study. It was a 2012 study. There's also a bunch of different meta-analyses that have found that unsaturated fats from seed oils are actually very much healthy. Now, that being said, fat in general is 9 calories per gram. So it's higher calories. So like, obviously, if you are frying your food in seed oils, like for example, peanut and canola oil are very, very popular frying oils. If you fry your food in peanut oil, which is technically like, I mean, I know the peanuts are like technically a bean, but they're known as seed oils. That's not going to be good for you. But comparatively, if you have like canola oil in like an emulsion in your salad dressing, and then you pour like a healthy serving of salad dressing over your salad, they're two different foods. Fried chicken and salad are two very different foods, and you can't compare them as if they're the same just because they have the same ingredient. So from my understanding, it's mainly the calorie surplus that you get from like fried foods, from the ultra processed snacks. And the reason why I'd say like ultra processed in quotations is because processing in and of itself is not the enemy as much as it's the caloric content of that processed food. So like if you took peanuts and you have a handful of peanuts, that looks like a more voluminous food than even like a tablespoon of nut butter, which is more processed. So like when I'm comparing the two foods, whey protein is really processed. It's one of the most processed foods that we can talk about. Protein powder is still a really good source of protein. So it's the comparison of like single ingredient, single processing method versus the whole food, the whole nutritional profile. What is it doing in your diet? And I think that's the difference that people need to differentiate between.
Also, it's like the process makes me laugh too, because a lot of the like carnivore bros now are like, no processing. And they'll say those things to me, and I go like, okay, I guess overall I don't want to get in the way of that, because like whole natural foods coming from the ground or coming from a farm, I get that. That's probably a better choice overall. But I was like, don't you take growth hormone? Isn't that like like teams of labs of giant teams of people were processing that, and they're like, yep, it's different. I go, but wait, that's a process. That's the most processed thing that you could probably imagine. You know, pharmaceutical grade growth hormone, I would imagine, is pretty processed. But I don't know. It is weird, and I'm sure we're dealing with the same thing. This is definitely not my forte, but I'm sure we're dealing with a lot of the same things with military stuff and politics, in that people are getting teeny bits of information that are not in an arena that they have extremely high levels of understanding of, and then they're extrapolating that and making a living out of that, and it's driving us all kind of up the wall. It's a real weird rat race to get obsessive about stuff that doesn't necessarily have much of a meaning at the end. You know, like, I can't tell you it's the same thing with like for something I will kind of have at least a little bit of understanding on. My grandfathers on both sides. My dad is a cancer survivor. He's 82 years old. He's giant and he's fat and he takes terrible care of himself. And he went through chemo like a bunch of times in the last 5 years, and he's alive and he's fine and he's healthy and has a giant bouffant head of hair. Both of my grandfathers died in their late 90s, and the day they died, they were like slicking back their big body. And so at 45, I have all my friends come up to me and they're like, what kind of shampoo are you using? I go, dude, I was put on earth to have a beautiful, and I thank God. I'm not, but there's no secret to this one. A lot of it is just genetics and everything, and you're going down this road of getting obsessive about these slight nuances. And the reality is like, genetically, you're that guy, and I'm sure there's things you could do to make a little bit of a difference, but spending all this money / effort into and brain power when you could be devoting it to other stuff gets weird. And it's like when we get so far down the road of seed oils and different forms of proteins that are going to be more beneficial versus this other one, I go like, yeah, but you're 175 pounds. You had 3,000 calories today. That's way more important. Let's just focus on that, you know?
Yeah, and that's what we see in the literature. So individuals who, and just FYI, I don't promote any fad diets. I actually discourage from it. I don't like neither vegan nor carnivore, but if I had to put them on a pedestal, I'd say vegan comes first and then carnivore, just because carnivore, there's significantly more negative outcomes associated with that diet compared to something like a plant-based diet, and I can understand the ethics behind it. That being said, I only promote balanced diet. I don't give a crap about either or. With all that being said, there is evidence to suggest that if you just consume around maybe like a gram, 0.8 grams per pound of body weight in protein, it doesn't matter where that protein is coming from if you have a diverse diet, because you're eating a diverse diet. You're getting a diverse source of protein. You're getting all the amino acids you need. And that is a very important thing to understand. Like the whole diet is better than just like the one tiny little food that you're consuming. And then also just to touch on your genetics point, it's very funny, like how you've mentioned genetics there, because that was something that I've been bringing up a lot in like the arguments against like the whole entire, like you need a surplus to, you need like a bulking sort of cutting cycle to gain muscle. There's one mechanism by which like you gain fat, which is really genetically determined. You can have like a hyperplastic, a hypertrophic, or maybe a little mix in between phenotype of like how you grow fat cells. And there's a lot of debate right now, at least in the scientific community, on which one is better or worse. But we're starting to find out more and more that the more extreme versions, so like if you have a really hyperplastic phenotype, you only gain new fat cells. That's not good, in the same way that having a really hypertrophic phenotype where your cells just get bigger and bigger and bigger are also not good.
Right.
So it's like, I feel like the extreme sides of the spectrum, it depends on what you're looking at in your body, but if we're to like generalize, it just depends like on so many different things. But genetics is so big, like people just ignore that, and I don't. Ugh.
I don't want to make excuses for people or give them people reasons to not take fitness and nutrition seriously, but at the same time, I think it does provide comfort. The guys in the last couple of years, especially with like the explosion of like shows like Joe Rogan and stuff like that, which are not fitness based necessarily, but he will have on Dorian Yates, he will have on Ronnie Coleman, right?
Right.
And I love that because it gives the general public the chance for Ronnie Coleman to outright say, if you don't have the genetics to be Ronnie Coleman, you're never, I don't care how hard you work out, I don't care how many steroids you take, you're never going to look like me. I was gifted, from the start. And I remember on Loveline many years ago, Marissa Miller was the cover model for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And I found it so meaningful that she said, oh yes, I'm a model. Okay. So I take my physique and my fitness and my nutrition very seriously. But I have to point out, like, I was 6 feet tall and size 0 with giant boobs when I was in 7th grade. And
Right.
like my mom's really thin, my dad's ripped. Like there's a lot that goes into that. I don't want people to think like you can have this if you work really hard. It's like, no, there's people some people lucked out, some people did, right now. If I were to have some time machine and Usain Bolt was being born and I was being born and someone took me aside and said, from day one, all we're going to focus on is sprinting. We're going to work our ass off and you're going to train with all your level of discipline. And Usain Bolt never saw a track. He'd still fuck me up at age 45 in a sprint. Like he has giant long legs and his gait and his ability to move and I'm bow-legged and uncoordinated. And it's just like, there's certain stuff that can't be denied. And the more and more we kind of acknowledge those things, not trying to motivate people not to work hard or to go after what they want, but we also have to take into consideration that some people, and we all are in different ways, it's just some people are touched by God to have physical gifts,
Right.
You can be the best version of yourself, but you can't be anybody else.
No, correct.
And
yes.
that's the biggest thing. Like when we're talking about especially when we're talking about people who are extremely fast, extremely strong, extremely good looking, there's structure, there's this type of mutation. Well, it's not really it's more like just genetic variation, single nucleotide polymorphism, which basically stands for this one tiny little molecule inside your DNA is different in yours compared to the average person. That is how much it takes to get like that little extra edge on the track, a little extra edge on like weight. But like you're looking at something that you can't even see under a microscope, and you're saying that, oh, well, if I just like train super hard and I do all the things right, I'm going to be better than that person. No, your genetics will humble you because you can only be yourself. You can't be anyone else.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear people say that openly, especially with a deeper understanding from the actual scientific standpoint, because I see it and just deal with it on a meathead level. And Joe, you could probably talk to this as well. Because I think the coolest thing that's happened in the physical kind of fitness and exercise world in the last 20 years is the explosion of martial arts to a much more kind of broad spectrum of people.
Right.
What I mean by that is it was so easy when I was 7 years old and watching Van Damme movies where people would say like, if you know the Demok special death touch, it doesn't matter how big or strong you are. Like you could take out a group of men, and Bruce Lee could beat up an entire battalion of people. And I was like, well, it's so much harder to believe that when I go to jiu-jitsu. I'll go to jiu-jitsu today, and there'll be a kid who's never trained before, but he's a linebacker at University of Texas, and he'll just pick me up and throw me around like a baby, like literally, like he's not even breaking a sweat, just smashing my face into the mat. He's never been on the mats in his life. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I guess there's a limits to this kind of magic stuff.
Well, those are the guys where you just like play dead and wait till they get above past your center line, and then you can just roll them. And you got 45, 55-year-old men like being like, oh yeah, did you see so and so said this on TikTok? And it's like, we're not even in the same realm, let alone it's not even, I can't even say like apples to oranges like comparison, because that's not even a good comparison. Like we're not even, it's just so far surpassed from that. And I think it goes the same way with misconceptions. I see it a lot with women, even in weight loss, and it does go both ways. Like some of it's where they feel like a failure because they've tried, like by the time we see them, right, we've seen them as clients, they've had so many failures because it was the Instagram plan or the so-and-so thing or the fad thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Did you know, I mean, you were talking earlier, Ella, about, PCOS. It's like, well, did you know you have this condition actually that is a major barrier? And you like, not only the genetics, not only the 20 years, whatever this person training and working to look that way, but also on top of it, hey, we looked at your blood work. We found these things. Hey, did you know that?
And I also just wanted to like briefly say, like, I kind of had the opposite transformation of you guys, at least in terms of like martial arts. I started off in Taekwondo. I worked my ass off for a few summers where I was like going into Taekwondo 7 hours a day with like a 2-hour break in between. I was training really, really hard, got to the nationals, and I got really humbled really fast because it's just everybody there is genetically blessed. I moved over to powerlifting, and I was benching my body weight within 5 weeks, and from there on I worked my way up to a really like just a genetically good weight like for what I am. So like it really goes to show like your genetics do play a really big part, and I think a lot of people, they also want to be something that they're not, so they'll like go into this one sport because they think it's cool, but little do they know that they're not as well built for it as some other people, and they'll get really discouraged by that, which is also really harmful.
Yeah, I have a lot of Brazilian savages at my gym, and luckily they're very nice, and they're some of my coaches. So I think I look like they do. I'm like, I didn't look like that. I didn't step over and do that nice little smooth little move you just did. Like,
here's the thing about Brazilian guys though, that I don't like much. Okay, I don't mind getting the shit kicked out of me by some gnarled, ugly freak of a man. Some guy from Ohio who's a college wrestler. And I was like, look at that gnarled, ugly fucking maniac. I go like, well, yeah, of course. You're going to toy with a guy. Like a Brazilian guy comes in, he fresh off the boat from Rio, beautiful, like a male model. And then he beats me up. I go, no, this I can't.
No, this isn't cool. This is
was
this a photo, like some kind of model shoot here we're doing here? Or is this jujitsu? And dude could choke you in 1,000 different ways before you blink. I'm like, this isn't fair. I want to give up.
My ego goes in directions. But when it comes to this stuff, yeah, I've just started to get a little bit more serious about making the push to make training and nutrition stuff more accessible. I have my first program on Train Heroic that's available, the Apex program, and then also have my Patreon, and you can check that out, which is linked all over the place with my socials and things like that, at Mike Catherwood. And then also my podcast, Mikey Likes You, kind of gives you a nice catch-all for all that stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Ella, any closing thoughts from you?
Not necessarily. It was really nice to meet you, by the way, Mike. I remember seeing that first video clip. It's very visually stimulating. But yeah, no, it was really fun to talk. Just I guess ramble about stuff. I do tend to like kind of go on tangents just because I'm very visual, so like whenever I'm thinking about something, it like actually pops up in my head.
We appreciate everybody tuning in today, and with that, we'll see you guys. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.